say no. And I said, well, maestro, my best I can do. More than my best, I cannot promise. If I manage to learn the part with my performances of Valkyria and Valkyria, not Sieglinde, Brunhilde. I point out. And he says, all right, I guarantee you that, and you guarantee me that you try. That's good enough for me. So I said, well, inside of myself, if they're crazy enough to think that, then I was still young, and you know, being young, you have to gamble. There is when my experience in my schooling days came handy.
Yes.
Because I was already prepared for all the tricks.
You could have shocks, but not surprises.
No surprises, and no shocks even. Because, you see, Wagner is much easier to sing, frankly.
In a way, yes, of course.
In every way. When I used to sing Isolde and I used to sing Brunhilde, there was no comparison with the Bellini roles or even the Donizetti, because they're much less exposed and much less difficult. But the basis is the schooling of bel canto, to sing whatever you sing.
When you get a new role, a new part
Yes.
suggested to you, will you sing, will you consider singing such and such an opera by
Exactly.
so-and-so? What happens to you then?
Well, then, it's a very matter-of-fact. You really have to put your feet on your ground and be very matter-of-fact in the beginning. You look at the role, as we know how to read and write, we know how to read our music. We're supposed to. So you read a role, and in the beginning you're enthused, you're exalted, and you say, well, I have a way of my own. This way I've learned from my teacher, De Hidalgo, and also from Serafin, which are the major people in my life. They have taught me, and life has taught me, that the last act is the most important. Because no matter how much and how well you've sung in the very few, 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 first acts, if the last act is not superior to all the rest, well, you might as well not sing it. We have sung frequently roles that do not have the best last act, but I essentially choose an opera where at the end the last impression is the best.
So you get the score and you go through
First
with
of all,
particular
because we
attention to the
warm
end.
up.
You go
read it
through the score and
yes,
see
you
how
go
it
through
feels.
the score, so you have a brief look at, and you say briefly, well, to sum it up in 2 minutes, shall we say, or what it takes, yes, I would like to do it. Now, once you say yes, then you take it, act by act, and you, first of all, say, what is she? Does the characterization, how can I say, the person agree with the music? You put the music together with the personaggio, and you try to make them agree. Frequently, they do agree. Then you take the music and you learn it as you were in the conservatoire. In other words, exactly as it's written, nothing more and nothing less, which is the phrase that I call straitjacketing.
Absolutely strictly in tempo and everything.
Exactly, strictly how the composer wrote it. The conductor gives you his cuts, gives you his possibilities. If you have cadenzas, he gives you ideas about what his cadenzas would be. And his cadenzas, I mean, are never his if he's a conscientious conductor. He always builds his cadenzas according to the taste and the liking and the particular makings of the composer.
Of course, yes.
Because Bellini is quite different from Donizetti. Donizetti is quite different from Rossini, and so forth and so on. And the composers felt that if you're dealing with sentiments, with characters, with music, let us deal with less florid things, or rather let us use embellishments to the service of expressions. In fact, in the later years of Verdi, even Bellini, shall we say even Donizetti, if you care that much for the composers and not for your own private success, if you really care to look into the music, you will always find a trill or an embellishment or a scale that justifies an expression of feeling of happiness or of unhappiness, of uneasiness, anxiety. There is always a reason for such thing. Then you learn the role exactly as A, B, C, D. And when you've learned that, then you try to speak it to yourself, as you have the recitative. By recitative, what do we mean? Speaking. They are the introductions to the arias. Usually. Once upon a time, 150 years ago, the public just used to walk out, eat, laugh, I don't know, used to stay eternally in the theater and would come in for the big pieces. Thank heavens now they don't. So the composers are much more respected now than once upon a time.
Yes.
The recitative are frequently very attractive and very difficult to give a, shall we say, a rhythm, because all music has a certain rhythm. By rhythm, I don't mean the way it's written exactly, because once you learn how it's written and the exact value of each note and each phrase, then, and this I have learned from Serafin in occasion of my Norma, when I auditioned. So he said, very well, you know the music perfectly well. Now you go home, my dear Miss Callas, and speak it to yourself. Keep on speaking, and let's see if, with what proportions, with what rhythm you come back to me tomorrow. Because if you speak it to yourself, how would you do it in music? Forget that you're singing and these are the values. Respect the values, but try to be free for a minute. If you spoke these phrases, how would you speak them? According to Bellini's style and this and that. And on that, you cultivated yourself, which is so true. The recitative must have a certain flowing rhythm. What
That's
you give
the
at a
thing,
certain
isn't it?
point,
Yes.
you give back, you take here, you give back there. And the characterization of Italian music is always a flowing movement, no matter how slow things goes, no matter how slow a rhythm. So once you get that in your mind, and it's not done in one day, it's not done in 1 week, and in fact I don't think it's ever finished, because an interpreter grows each year.
Exactly. You've matured it subconsciously.
Your subconscious has matured it and has made it his own, so it helps you out. And it has managed to mature the role, and in other words, then, having broken this down completely, then you can take wings. By taking wings, I mean from down to earth, 2 and 2 makes 4, because everything must be logical in opera, because you can't persuade the public of a preposterous thing. Of course, what is the main thing that musicians should do? It's give it the most credibility possible, and to persuade the public of its reality,
There we come
and
back.
to take them over. As I say, opera is something that has been dead quite a while ago. So if we really don't try our very best to give it much seriousness and much persuasiveness and dignity, you know, it's not taken in with pleasure.
When you're working on a new part, at what stage do you ask for collaboration? You obviously need a pianist fairly early on.
Definitely, yes.
As
A
well at the
pianist,
same
yes.
time.
A pianist that can be very, very, shall we say, very particular in teaching you to remind you exactly the values of notes, and not let one slip you. You learn the role, you roughly learn it, as I say, because these goes in stages. You cannot expect to learn it immediately. You have to give it time to be learned, to be matured, and then leave it, and then retake it, and then after that, it depends whether you have lots of time. If you have lots of time, it can take you even months, but it can take me very little also. Depends. Then you need the company. That usually happens after about 2 weeks' time, or yes. Then all are called for a rehearsal, the first piano rehearsal. Then you start. I usually...
That's with the
that
maestro, with the conductor.
yes, but with your other colleagues also.
Yes.
I used to, in my early years, I always did, in fact, I used to look at the posters and ask and